Saint Nocturne University. Book 2. Chapter 4. 48 hours without class should have felt like a gift. At Saint Nocturne, it felt like a threat wearing pajamas. By noon, the campus had divided itself into 6 different emergencies, 4 unofficial councils, 3 protest committees, 2 cleanup crews, and 1 rapidly growing argument about whether the dining hall should still be serving brunch after being used as a ritual chamber. The answer was yes. Students had almost died in that dining hall. They were still going to eat. The line stretched from the entrance to the cracked fountain outside, full of students with bruised faces, glittering protection charms, torn formal wear, hoodies, slippers, and the stunned look of people who had survived a supernatural institutional collapse and still had meal swipes. A handwritten sign had been taped above the serving station. Today's menu: grits, eggs, plant-based sausage, trauma pancakes. No red beverages until further notice. Kiki Bell stood in front of the sign with her arms crossed. Trauma pancakes. Dre Coleman, working behind the counter because apparently saving the city did not automatically remove him from the schedule, slid a tray of biscuits into place. Kitchen staff named them. What makes them trauma pancakes? They're regular pancakes. Then why call them trauma pancakes? Dre looked up. Because everybody eating them is traumatized. Kiki nodded. That's fair. Beside her, Rome Ellis held a tray with both hands like he still did not trust the building not to snatch it away. His mother had finally left campus after making him promise to text every hour, avoid secret basements, and stop standing near prophecy-looking people. Rome had agreed to 2 out of 3. Taj Cross stood behind them, holding 3 trays stacked up his arm because Marva Cross had declared his first act of restitution would be carrying food for people who still had names because other people protected them. He had not argued. Nobody trusted him enough to be impressed yet, but the silence around him had changed. It was not forgiveness. It was observation. Kiki looked over her shoulder. You good back there, community service? Taj's jaw tightened. I'm carrying 6 breakfasts. 8. I want juice. Dre pointed to the sign. No red beverages. Orange. That is allowed. Taj muttered, I am not your waiter. Kiki smiled. Today you are everybody's waiter. Rome carefully added, Ms. Marva said until further notice. Taj looked at him. Rome looked down. Then Taj sighed and reached for orange juice. Fine. Kiki patted Rome's shoulder. Speak truth to power, baby. Across the dining hall, Imani sat with several Howl House students who kept looking at her like she had answers hiding under the jacket. The jacket itself hung over the back of her chair, finally quiet. Without it on her shoulders, Imani looked younger and more tired. A freshman boy asked, So are you, officially in charge now? Imani stared at him over her coffee. No. But the gate accepted you. The gate can enroll in student government if it has opinions. The table went quiet. Then one girl laughed. Imani rubbed her forehead. Look. Howl House needs a meeting. A real one. With elders, students, hidden lines, first moons, everybody who got named or almost named. I'm not letting the university, the council, or a haunted stadium assign me leadership because I yelled good under pressure. Kiki arrived with a tray and dropped into the seat beside her. You did yell very good. Not helping. I am helping morale. Taj set down the rest of the trays carefully. Imani looked at him. He looked back, then lowered his eyes first. That should have satisfied her. It did not. "Tonight," she said, "you start listing every person who contacted you about the role. Names, messages, dates, where you met them. No editing." Taj nodded. "Okay." Kiki blinked. That was too easy. Taj's mouth twisted. "You want me to argue?" "No, but I did stretch first." Rome sat beside Kiki. "What happens if the council comes for him?" Imani took a slow breath. "Then they explain why a student had access to something only elders and council liaisons were supposed to know existed." Taj looked up. The table understood the shift. He had betrayed them. He had also been used. Both things would have to sit in the same room without killing each other. Kiki stabbed a pancake. "This school has me understanding nuance before lunch. I hate it." Near the windows, Zora Baptiste stood with a plate in her hand and no appetite. The dining hall looked normal if she did not stare too long. The red cracks in the floor had been covered with temporary brass plates. The shattered glass had been swept. The enchanted skylight showed real sky again, though a corner of it still flickered with static whenever someone said nightingale. The tables had been reset, even the one Nia had collapsed near. Students ate there now, laughing too loudly, because loud laughter was sometimes how people told fear it had overstayed. Zora's collected secrets were gone. That should have made her feel lighter. Instead, she felt unarmed. Talia had not come to brunch. She had texted, "I'm sleeping. Do not bring spirits, sisters, vampires, or apologies before 4. Zora had stared at the message for a full minute before replying. "Noted." Then, after another minute, "Thank you." Talia had not answered. "Fair." 7 Monroe approached with 2 coffees and the careful expression of someone who had been through public disgrace and still decided caffeine mattered. He held one out. Zora took it. "Sugar?" she asked. "Yes." She sipped. "Too much?" I panicked. "You often panic sweetly." "Only for friends who return stolen objects to prevent institutional possession." Zora looked at him over the cup. He looked away first. His forged prophecy had been taken by the archive return process. Miles Holloway's thesis had appeared in Graves Hall, the library, the Root Circle department inbox, and on every faculty desk with a note that read, "Authorship restored. Review required." 7's official academic status was now listed as pending truth hearing. Not expelled. Not cleared. Suspended in bureaucracy, which was basically Saint Nocturne purgatory with better fonts. Zora leaned against the window ledge. "How are you?" 7 laughed once. "Terrible." "Good answer. I keep thinking I should leave before they drag me out." "They might." "I know. That wasn't me comforting you." "I know." They stood in silence. Outside, workers and students moved across the quad. Some carried broken furniture. Some hauled boxes of recovered records out of the administration building. Root Circle students had set up a temporary spell station near the fountain to check for lingering campus heart influence. A banner hung crookedly from Graves Hall. "Archive correction in progress. Do not lie near the door." 7 watched it. "I liked thinking I beat the system," he said. Zora did not interrupt. "I knew legacy students bought their way in. I knew old families got recommendations from ghosts on the board. I knew Saint Nocturne wanted students like me to be grateful for scraps. So when I forged the prophecy, It felt fair. He winced. Strategic. Same lie, nicer shoes. Yeah. He turned the coffee cup in his hands. Miles was like me. Zora looked at him. 7 swallowed. Scholarship student. Too smart in the wrong tone. Too ambitious for people who liked their poor students humble. He found the system and got swallowed. I found what was left of him and wore it like a key. Zora's voice softened despite herself. You confessed. After his ghost called me out on a stage. Still counts. Does it? She looked out at the quad. I don't know, she said. But it starts something. 7 nodded slowly. Then said, Delphine wants to co-chair the truth hearing. Zora turned to him. He looked miserable. I think she wants to destroy me with procedure. She probably does. She also sent me 3 sources on restorative academic justice and a note saying my citations are embarrassing. Zora's mouth twitched. 7 saw it. Don't. I didn't say anything. You thought it loudly. She sipped her too sweet coffee. It did look romantic when she pulled you up. 7 groaned. I am begging this campus for one day without romantic allegations. Wrong campus. Behind them, Malik St. Crowne entered the dining hall and immediately created a weather change. Blood court students looked up. Some with anger. Some with curiosity. Some with the newly cautious respect given to people whose mothers publicly refused to disown them and whose cousins got exposed as memory criminals. Malik did not wear a crest ring. People noticed. He noticed them noticing and pretended not to, which meant he noticed extra hard. Serafina entered beside him, not holding his arm. That was also noticed. A blood court girl whispered, Are they still contracted? Another whispered, Girl, all contracts are under review. A third said, I heard Serafina's mother tried to freeze her accounts. Did it work? She moved money before the gala. Icon. Serafina walked past them without looking, which somehow made the whispers feel like compliments and insults at once. Malik stopped near Zora and 7. Zora looked at his hand. No ring. No ring. Feel naked. Extremely. 7 took a sip of coffee. A rare moment of vampire vulnerability. Malik looked at him. Are you still enrolled? 7 looked pained. That was targeted. It was. Zora almost smiled. Serafina joined them, tray in hand, posture flawless, eyes tired. She looked at Zora. Your sister is looking for you. Zora's stomach tightened. Where? Outside Graves Hall with Nasir and your aunt. Zora's appetite died completely. 7 saw her face. You don't have to go now. Yes, I do. Malik frowned. Why? Because if I wait, the campus will schedule it with a mirror and refreshments. Serafina nodded. Accurate. Zora handed 7 her coffee. He looked at it. I already have one. Now you have consequences. She walked out. The quad had become a landscape of aftermath. Students sat on the grass in clusters, comparing archive returns, arguing about whether their records were accurate, crying over restored memories, laughing at old lies, apologizing badly, refusing apologies, and generally proving that Saint Nocturne without a demon heart was still emotionally unsafe. Near the fountain, Brielle Laurent stood with Nia Bellamy, Juno Price, Lila Freeman, and Dre Coleman. That grouping alone was enough to make people stare. Brielle's hair was tied back, Gold shells gone, red beads removed after veil stage. She wore an oversized hoodie someone had given her after the performance. Without the glam, without the stage light, without the phone in her hand, she looked like a girl trying to stand still in the wreckage of her own reputation. Nia held a folder against her chest. Archive returned documents. She had not opened most of them yet. Juno stood with both hands in their pockets, face stable again, watching Nia's folder like it might accuse them personally. Lila scrolled through emails so fast her thumb looked angry. Dre sat on the fountain edge, eating a biscuit from a napkin. Brielle looked at him. Are you always eating? Are you always judging? Yes. Then yes. Nia almost smiled. Brielle saw and did not comment because sometimes naming a small good thing scared it away. Lila looked up from her phone. The city paper wants a joint statement from students. Brielle shook her head. No. You didn't let me finish. I heard statement and my spirit declined. Nia said, I don't want my name in anything yet. Lila nodded immediately. Then it isn't. Juno looked at Nia. Mine can be. Nia turned. Juno swallowed. I mean, if there needs to be a public accountability record. My name can be in it. Not yours. Brielle looked at Juno. Nia studied them for a long moment. That doesn't fix it, she said. I know. But it matters. Juno nodded, eyes wet. Lila typed something. Okay. Then we separate public system exposure from personal survivor record. No identifying details without consent. Dre said, also explain the university used student platforms. Lila nodded. Already in the headline. Brielle narrowed her eyes. Which headline? Lila read from her notes. They use calm like a weapon, Saint Nocturne students expose living campus scandal system. Dre lifted a hand slightly. That was mine. I credited you. With my full name. You are a source now. I don't like that. You should have been less quotable. Dre sighed and ate the rest of the biscuit. Brielle's phone buzzed. She flinched before looking. Nia noticed. It was not the shade room below. The app had deleted itself. This was a text from an unknown number. Your performance agreement audit is complete. You are owed compensation. Legal office requests meeting. Brielle stared. Then laughed. Not happily. Compensation. Juno looked over. For your vocal samples. And exploitation. And unauthorized boosting. And donor use. And probably a check big enough for them to say healing without saying lawsuit. Nia's face hardened. Brielle looked at her. I'm not taking anything quietly. Nia nodded. Then, after a pause, she said, take enough to pay for a lawyer. Brielle blinked. Dre pointed at Nia. That's good advice. Lila added, and an independent one, not campus legal. Brielle looked at all of them. Something in her face shifted. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. A new shape, awkward and possible. Okay, she said. Across the quad, Zora reached Graves Hall. The building looked wounded. A crack ran down the front steps, glowing faint green-gold where Root Circle students had patched it temporarily. The doors were open, but the entrance had been draped with black cloth and strings of rosemary. Someone had left flowers beneath Miles Holloway's portrait, though no official portrait had existed yesterday. Now it hung beside the door, newly restored from archive memory. Miles looked younger than he had as a ghost. That made Zora stop. Aya stood near the steps, looking at the portrait too. Nasir stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Maxine leaned against a column, arms folded, not speaking. Professor Graves was nowhere in sight. Good. Or maybe not. Zora approached slowly. Aya turned first. There was no script for this. No class. No ritual. No scandal format. No shade room caption. Just two sisters with almost no shared history and too much stolen from them to know where to begin. Aya held up her phone. The record is still waiting, she said. Zora nodded. Mine too. Do you want to open it? No. Aya let out a breath that might have been relief. Good, she said. Me neither. That helped. A little. Nasir looked between them. It requires both your consent. That's new. Zora looked at him. You sound surprised consent exists. At this school? Yes. Fair. Maxine pushed off the column. There are other records. Zora's eyes moved to her. Maxine continued carefully. Your mother's. Mine. Some from Mabel. Some from the night at the chapel. Some I think Aya should have too. Aya's face closed slightly. Zora caught it. What? Aya looked toward the quad. People keep offering me records like they're giving me pieces of myself back. But I don't know what happens when I see all of it. Maxine's eyes softened. You don't have to see it today. Aya looked at her aunt. You used to sing when I was little, Aya said. Maxine froze. Zora turned to her. Maxine's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Aya's voice stayed even, but her eyes shone. Not big songs. Just little ones when you thought I was asleep. I remembered that before I remembered your face. Maxine covered her mouth. Zora had never heard Auntie Maxine sing. Not once. That hurt in a new, petty, childish way she hated. Maxine looked at Zora like she knew. I stopped, Maxine whispered. Zora looked away. Nasir shifted, uncomfortable with the intimacy and too tied to them to leave. The portrait of Miles Holloway flickered slightly in the corner of Zora's eye. Seven appeared behind her, holding both coffees like a man who had lost the plot but kept the props. I brought your consequences, he said, then saw the mood and immediately regretted having a personality. Aya looked at him. 7 Monroe. He straightened. Yes. You used Miles Holloway's prophecy. His face tightened. Yes. Are you going to make it right? I'm going to try. Aya studied him with the unsettling precision of someone trained by blood court and born from Baptiste roots. Trying is soft, she said. Zora glanced at her. 7 swallowed. Then I'm going to do the work and be judged by the result. Aya nodded. Better. Zora looked at 7. She's older than me by 4 years. He blinked. Is that why I felt grated? Aya almost smiled. A bell rang from inside Graves Hall. Not the chapel bell. A classroom bell. Students across the quad looked up. The emergency assembly would begin in 30 minutes. No one had called it officially. The campus had simply placed notices on every door. Emergency assembly, Founders Auditorium. Attendance required for governance reset. Do not bring weapons, hexed objects, contracted blood, or unprocessed revenge without declaration. Someone had added in marker. What about processed revenge? Under it, another person had written. See root circle table. Founders Auditorium was already overflowing by the time Zora's group arrived. Students filled the seats, aisles, walls, stage edge, balcony, and back doors. Professors stood along the sides like they were unsure whether they still had authority or had merely dressed for it. Staff occupied a front section for once, not hidden in back. Parents and local elders had been allowed into the rear balcony. Reporters were barred, which meant Lila was inside as a student journalist and 3 city reporters were outside loudly considering lawsuits. The podium had been repaired. Then covered in sticky notes again. Who is in charge? Tuition refunds when? Where is Nightingale? Is Camille arrested or just embarrassed? Can we vote on deans? Why did my mirror call me by my dead name? Who owns student Dayton now? Why is the dining hall still charging for extra plantain? That last one had several signatures. Brielle sat near the middle with Nia and Juno, not hiding, not performing. Lila and Dre sat behind them, already writing. Imani sat with Howl House but left an empty seat beside her. After a long moment, Taj sat there. Some students glared. She let them. Malik and Serafina sat near Blood Court but not inside the old cluster. Nia St. Crowne sat with the vampire students, spine straight, face unreadable. Camille was not present. Her absence sat in the room anyway. Zora sat with Aya, Nasir, 7, and Maxine in an awkward line that felt less like family and more like a witness bench. Professor Graves stood near the stage with Dr. Celeste Amari, Delphine Hart, Mama Odessa, Marva Cross, Auntie Maxine, Celia St. Crowne, and several staff members, including the dining hall manager who looked ready to fight for overtime back pay. At exactly 1 o'clock, the cheerful orientation voice returned through the speakers. Good afternoon, Saint Nocturne community. The auditorium booed. The voice paused. Feedback acknowledged. More boos. Emergency governance reset will now begin. Previous dean unavailable. Kiki shouted, unavailable is doing a lot. The voice continued. Per revised autonomy protocols, interim leadership must include faculty, staff, student, and community representation from all major campus factions and affected local districts. A student shouted, who revised the protocols. The speakers clicked. Archive return. Dre leaned toward Lila. The paperwork became sentient. Lila whispered, don't tempt me with a headline. The voice said, candidates may be nominated. The room exploded. Hands went up. People shouted names. Professor Graves. No. Marva Cross. She don't even work here. That's why. Mama Odessa. She has a theater. Dre Coleman. Dre stood so fast his chair scraped. Absolutely not. Several people cheered louder. Lila started laughing. He pointed at her. Do not. She wrote his name down. Imani Cross. Zora Baptiste. Zora's head snapped up. Who said that? Talia, standing near the back with her bat, lifted 2 fingers. Zora glared. Talia mouthed, you owe me. Someone shouted, Brielle Laurent. Brielle looked horrified. Another shouted, not yet. Brielle pointed in that direction. Thank you. 7 Monroe. Delphine stood immediately. He is under academic review. 7 sank lower in his seat. Another student shouted, Delphine Hart. Root circle split into applause and boos, which seemed to please her. Lila Freeman. Yes. No, she'll investigate herself. Lila said, I would. Malik St. Crowne. Blood Court reacted with offense, interest, and family trauma. Malik muttered, I'd rather be eaten by the chapel. Serafina said, you'd campaign badly. I'm choosing to take that as care. Don't. The orientation voice let the chaos run for nearly a minute before chiming. Nominations will be sorted into advisory categories. The room groaned. The voice continued. Student Emergency Council. Faculty Accountability Board. Staff Operations Committee. Community Reparations Council. Magical Safety Review. Housing and Contract Audit. Archive Consent Office. Dre put his head in his hands. Lila patted his shoulder. Congratulations on staff operations. I quit. You keep saying that with no paperwork. The dining hall manager stood. I nominate Dre Coleman for Staff Operations Committee. Dre slowly turned. His manager smiled. Back pay negotiations need a student worker who writes things down. Dre whispered, betrayed by labor. The room voted by hand, voice, spell light, and in one case a ghostly thumbs up from Miles Holloway's portrait flickering on the auditorium wall. Dre was elected before he could escape. He sat down like his life had worsened. Lila was nominated to the Archive Consent Office and Student Emergency Council. She accepted both after adding that she would resign if the bodies became symbolic without power. The room applauded. Several administrators looked ill. Imani was nominated for Student Emergency Council and Magical Safety Review. She accepted the first, refused the second, then accepted after Rome pointed out First Moons needed someone who understood what had happened at Howl Ground. Brielle was nominated for Archive Consent Office regarding voice, image, and student media protections. She stood, looked at Nia, and said, only if Nia or someone she chooses can veto any policy language involving memory recovery. Nia looked startled. Then she stood. I'll sit on it, she said. But I'm not becoming a symbol. Mama Odessa called from the stage, put that in the minutes. Lila and Dre both said, already did. Juno was nominated as Vale-born student representative for identity and performance protections. They almost refused, then accepted with the condition that shapeshifter consent rules be written by shapeshifters, not root circle people with metaphors. Root circle booed. Then some applauded. Seven was not nominated again after Delphine's glare swept the room, but Miles Holloway's restored thesis was unanimously entered into the permanent archive under his name. Seven stood during the vote and did not sit until it passed. Zora was nominated for Archive Consent Office. She stood. No. Talia shouted, yes. Zora looked at her. I'm not being put in charge of secrets after hoarding them. Talia shouted back, that is literally why you know where the traps are. The room murmured. Zora hated that it made sense. Maxine watched quietly. Aya did too. Zora took a breath. Temporary. With oversight. And I don't handle anyone's private records alone. The orientation voice said, condition accepted. Zora sat down before anyone could clap too enthusiastically. Malik was nominated for blood contract review. He refused. Celia St. Crowne stood. My son will serve, she said. Malik turned. Excuse me. Celia looked down at him. You refused ownership in public. Now learn paperwork. Serafina leaned toward him. She ate that. I know. Malik stood slowly. Fine. But Serafina should co-chair. Serafina's eyes narrowed. Do not volunteer me because you're scared. I'm volunteering you because you read evil documents faster than I do. Celia looked at Serafina. He is correct. Serafina stared at both of them. Then stood. I accept, she said. And I want DuPont Holdings audited first. The room reacted loudly. Celia smiled faintly. Malik whispered, that was hot. Serafina did not look at him. Control yourself. Trying. Try silently. Professor Graves was nominated for Faculty Accountability Board. She accepted. Not as chair. That mattered. Dr. Amari stood and requested to be placed under review before serving in any capacity. The room went quiet. She looked at Nia. My research was used to harm students, Amari said. I gave access to systems I knew were compromised because ambition made me tolerant of rot when it funded my work. I do not ask for trust. Nia did not respond. Amari bowed her head and sat. No applause. That also mattered. The assembly lasted 3 hours. By the end, nobody was satisfied. That was how everyone knew it had gone better than usual. Outside the auditorium, the hallway became a mess of new committees, arguments, sign-up sheets, angry parents, crying students, and people immediately regretting agreeing to things. Dre stared at a clipboard someone had handed him. I have a committee. Lila looked over. You have too. No. You're on staff operations and housing audit. I never accepted housing audit. The dining hall manager accepted for you. She cannot do that. She did it loudly. Dre looked across the hall at his manager, who gave him a thumbs up. He whispered, workplace violence. Lila smiled. Democracy. Nearby, Brielle stood with Nia and Juno while Mama Odessa explained that veil-born consent policy needed teeth, glitter, and enforceability. Brielle nodded like she understood 2 of those. Imani was pulled into a cluster of Howl House students asking about the first emergency meeting. Taj lingered nearby, waiting to be assigned labor like a man trying not to run from his own repair. Malik and Serafina were approached by 3 vampire students holding blood contracts they wanted reviewed immediately. Serafina took the folder. Malik looked overwhelmed. You asked for paperwork, she said. I asked for co-chair. That is paperwork with witnesses. Zora slipped out through a side door before anyone could hand her a form. Aya followed. Nasir noticed and followed them both, which Zora would have complained about if his presence had not started to feel like part of the same broken sentence. They ended up behind Founders Auditorium, in a small courtyard with cracked stone benches and an overgrown hedge shaped like a lion no one had maintained since before finals last spring. For a while, they stood in the shade. Then Aya said, I don't know how to be your sister. Zora looked at her. Aya's face was steady, but her hands were clenched. Zora sat on the bench. Good, she said. I don't know how to have one. Aya sat beside her, leaving space. Nasir leaned against the hedge. Zora looked at him. You planning to supervise? I'm planning not to be alone. That shut her up. Aya looked at Nasir. Do you remember more now? He nodded. Not all. Enough. Do you remember me crying? Yes. Aya looked down. I remember your hand, Nasir said. You kept putting your fingers through the basket so I'd stop crying. Zora's chest twisted. Aya smiled sadly. You were loud. I was a baby. You were dramatic. Zora muttered, still is. Nasir gave her a look. Aya laughed. It was small. Good. Then silence returned. Zora took out her phone. The archive record still waited. Nia Baptiste childhood record/access requires consent from both sisters. She stared at it. Aya's phone was in her hand too. Zora said, not today. Aya nodded. Not today. Nasir looked at them. You both said that earlier. And we meant it twice, Zora said. Aya smiled again. Then her smile faded. There are things I did, she said. Zora's stomach tightened. Aya continued, under blood court. Under the name Aurelia Crowne. Things they told me were necessary. Things I told myself were survival. Nasir's expression sharpened. Zora looked at her sister. Are you warning me or confessing? Aya met her eyes. Both. Before Zora could answer, the blank icon on all three phones pulsed. The shade room below was gone. But the archive app remained. A message appeared. Unclaimed record updated. Additional access request received, Aurelia Crowne/court operations file. Requesting party, Lila Freeman. Status, pending Nia Baptiste consent. Aya went still. Zora looked at her. Nasir pushed off the hedge. Aya's face closed, old training locking into place. What is the court operations file? Zora asked. Aya stared at the phone. When she answered, her voice sounded far away. The things I survived by doing. Across campus, Lila Freeman stood in the student newsroom with both hands on her laptop, staring at the consent prompt that had just appeared. Dre stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. You requested Aya's file. I requested all blood court operations tied to Nia, the seals, and student harm. I didn't know it would root to her personal consent. Dre's face hardened. Then don't open it unless she says yes. I know. He studied her. She turned around. I know. A beat. Then her phone buzzed. Aya. Meet me behind Founders. Bring no recorder. Bring Dre. Lila looked at Dre. He lifted both eyebrows. Why me? Because apparently people trust you more when records might ruin them. I hate that this is my brand. They found Aya, Zora, and Nasir in the courtyard 10 minutes later. Lila held up both hands. No recorder. Dre held up his notepad. Zora glared. He said, blank page. Aya stood. I'll release the file, she said. Zora turned. You don't have to. Aya's smile was small and painful. I know. That's why I can. Lila spoke carefully. I requested operations tied to student harm. If your personal history is mixed in, we can restrict access. We can separate system evidence from survivor records. Aya looked at her. You said that to Nia. I meant it. Do you mean it for people who were used and also useful? Lila took a breath. Yes. Aya studied her. Then nodded. Then you will not publish anything from that file without my review and the consent of anyone harmed who is named in it. Lila nodded. Agreed. Dre added, put that in writing. Lila looked at him. He stared back. She took out her phone and wrote it. Aya watched. Then approved the archive request. All their phones went black. A file opened in the air between them, projected as pale gold text. Court operations, Aurelia Crowne. Status, contracted asset/bridge line survivor. Handler, Camille St. Crowne. Oversight, Lucienne Nightingale/Olin Mercer/Sealed Council Subcommittee. Zora felt sick. Aya did not move. The file scrolled. Assignments. Names. Dates. Events. Donor galas. Student interviews. Archive retrievals. Charm placements. Surveillance approvals. Voice sample transfers. Memory room attendance. Not all led by Aya. But enough. Zora saw Nia Bellamy's name. Brielle Laurent's vocal agreement. Juno's donor payment. Caleb Mercer's auction. Nasir Voss observation. Zora Baptiste proximity testing. Her own name appeared as a target. Zora Baptiste potential route anchor/unaware/monitor through low-stakes social catalysts. Zora whispered, low-stakes social catalysts. Dre read ahead. His face darkened. Caleb, he said. Aya's eyes closed. Zora looked at her. You knew about the bracelet. Aya opened her eyes. I knew a charm was being moved through a disposable student contact. I did not know it would be Caleb. I did not know it would reach your roommate. I did know you were being tested. The courtyard went silent. Zora stepped back. Nasir said softly, Zora. She lifted a hand. Not to him. To everyone. Aya's voice was tight. I am not asking you to understand. Good, Zora said. Because I don't. I was bound. So was I, apparently. I still get to be mad. Yes. That answer stopped Zora more than any defense could have. Aya's eyes shone. Yes, she repeated. You do. Lila looked like she wanted to close the file but knew shutting a thing did not unmake it. Dre looked at the ground, jaw tight. Zora stared at her sister. The stolen sister. The living sister. The sister who had been a child under a table. The sister who had worn blood quartz ring. The sister who had watched her from across the street. The sister whose operations file had her name in it as a target. All true. All unbearable. Zora turned and walked away. No dramatic speech. No curse. No tears where anyone could see. Just away. Seven saw her cross the quad and immediately started after her. Maxine grabbed his sleeve. He looked back. Maxine shook her head. For once, she said, voice rough, let a Baptiste woman walk without being followed. Seven hesitated. Then stopped. Zora made it to the edge of the fountain before the first tear fell. She wiped it angrily. Talia was sitting on the fountain ledge with the bat across her knees, eating grapes from a plastic cup. She looked up. Family reunion bad. Zora laughed. It came out broken. Talia held out the grapes. Zora stared at them. Then sat beside her and took one. For a while, neither said anything. Then Talia said, for the record, if your secret birds come back, I'm charging rent. Zora ate another grape. Fair. Across the quad, Aya stood in the courtyard, watching the sister she had lost walk away from the sister she had become. Nasir stayed beside her. Not touching. Just there. Aya's voice was barely audible. I thought truth would make me less alone. Nasir looked toward Zora by the fountain. Sometimes it just tells people where the distance is. Aya closed her eyes. Inside the chapel, sealed behind doors no one could open, the campus heart beat once. Softly. Almost like laughter. No one heard it? Except Camille St. Crowne, locked in a temporary holding room beneath the administration building, sitting calmly in a chair with reversed memory seals glowing around both wrists. She lifted her head. A smile spread across her face. "Lucienne," she whispered. From the black mirror across from her, Dean Nightingale's voice answered faintly. "Not gone. Not free. Not finished. Camille," it said. "Begin again."